Say it again.
Arminius, Herman the German, whatever we want to call him. What we are dealing with actually is something that is highly questionable when we talk about Germans, of course. We're talking about a group that really we don't know how to explain because we don't have any sources based on their writing. Our sources about these groups is basically either Roman or Christian. There may be nowadays ethnographers, archaeologists, other specialists of that sort who have something to share, but in general, we are dependent on written sources of others to tell us about these folks, these so-called Germans. And I say so-called because if you were to ask somebody, if you were walking around, somebody said, hey, what's the difference between a German and a Celt? It would be hard to say because you would say, well, wait, let me go ask an ethnographer. that would probably get you left alone. If you they would say, oh God. Yeah, because it's very hard to understand the differences between these various kinds of people. Maybe it was the 19th century, as you know, that this would create this image of this well-defined group of people who were very, very important in the development of medieval Europe. That's for sure. Because if they were existent as a group, they had heretofore not lived in the empire, but exterior to the empire, as we will see. As we will see, establish themselves in what we call Western Europe now, or the western part of the Roman Empire. It is odd to think, as much as we hear about them and the domination of their culture, that they were never a majority of people. They were always a sizable minority, albeit the ruling group. And remember, these folks are not literate, and they are not in the certain way completely independent of others, as we will see. But their beliefs, their ideals became very, very significant to the future of medieval Europe. So you can't say, oh, it's all just continuation of Rome, because it's not. Obviously, the Romans are going to be, what would they say in Hollywood, supporting cast? Yes, I mean, but because these folks are the rulers. So when we have sources that are Christian and Roman, some will be, shall we say, contrary or anti-German, but many will be supportive. Yeah. I mean, good people. We're glad they're here. They added a lot to our world, that kind of thing, because after all, they're on top. We'll see how that happens. Times change, don't they? Think 476. I know. Yeah. You and I both know what that's going to mean. Yes. No pressure. So here we have, and I think this is always interesting. Frank mentioned to you the famous battle back in Augustus' time. And that is, like they say, the cliche, the beginning of the end, if you will, because once the Germans get their foothold, it's like it's going to take us a long time, but we keep on inching forward. But it is by no means a steady period, because you can see this striped area and how these various tribal folk will just come forward, and the Romans will have so many. And I mean, think about the centuries that will go on before they completely take over. And it's not as if the Romans were saying, no, you can't come in. Because sometimes the Romans will say, well, yeah, we would like for you to come in, but we would like you to come in a peaceful way, and maybe you can take Latin 101, or yeah, maybe we could try you on for a toga and see how it fits in. In other words, you can kind of gradual, but you understand how this will come in terms of the decline of the Western Roman Empire, and at the same time, the growing desire of the Germans to come in en masse, and the problems that will create. And this is the way it's going to end up, with this great panoply of colors. And you see that, and go Byzantine, that's next week, when we love that, love the Byzantines, go Greek, right? So, in addition, they're the Visigoths way down south, and those nasty old Vandals in Africa, and the various other kingdoms. And you say, but where are the Romans? Oh, they're there. They are, in general, what we would call collaborators, even though that has a bad sound to it nowadays. But after all, you got to live with them. You don't have to like them, but you got to live with them, got to accept it. And they establish their kingdoms, and they will, of course, work with, collaborate with these educated folks, because we understand the Germans are not part of that, but they can appreciate it. And so you will have Germans with their Roman-like collaborators who will help in the establishment. See now the Ostrogoths, which is far more than Italy. See all that land in the north, and you say, well, that's not really Italy, but that's part of what they had. And you say, that's a lot of land for one people to have. Well, I think so too. But again, the maps will always show you it looks so neat and clean, but you can imagine there's probably a lot of action and a lot of disputed claims. Burgundy, you may like the wines. That's where it comes from. And then these various other areas. And some of these Germanic groups, they come and they go, and you think, why the ephemeral, why transitory? Intermarriage, defeat, whatever happens. History doesn't always tell us everything, does it, that we know. But we know the big facts in terms of Visigoths and Vandals and Ostrogoths. I mean, if that were, you have to list the major people on the final. See, I'm trying to help you here. That it could be all these Goths. You can just remember that. Then you can probably get that part right. So see the Angles and the Saxons over there. And you say, well, are they kin to the Celts in Ireland? I don't know. I mean, that would be interesting to think about, though. Again, if we want to hang out with ethnographers, maybe they would tell us something, but history doesn't have all of the answers. We just assume that all these people, none of whom are Roman, quote unquote, are, what we say in the South, kissing cousins. Somehow they may have been related. We certainly think the Germanic peoples were, because we know that Germanic peoples tended to enslave each other, because shoot, they were fighting a lot of the time, right? So when they're fighting, then a lot of the other side is taken. So you know where that's going to lead. Well, so your name Ludwig. Well, I'm Hermann. Good to have you in the family. I mean, it's like these German folks, I think they're pretty comfortable with each other. They fight all the time. It's not like they're just hanging out, loving on each other. I think they're fighting. That's what it's all about. Sources, we never forget. Sutton Hoo. And the joy of the discovery of Sutton Hoo in 1939, just with the start of World War II. It's amazing, isn't it? Gave them a little bit of cheerful news in the London newspapers about this particular discovery. And I understand that this is a very interesting tourist site nowadays and has been ever since. The discoveries there are absolutely amazing because, of course, in pre-Christian times, these Germanic peoples must have believed that the king and his entourage were on their way to the next world, and they would need everything that was nice. So they had all their best crystal and china, and, no throwaways. But it's very interesting to think about that they had all this, and you think, well, that shows you the value of archaeology. And I get that. It doesn't tell us necessarily about the origins and the early period, because by this point, as those of you who had English history know, I mean, they were pretty well established in the British Isles by this point. And for a king to have all this, but they have gold and all kinds of very, very valuable things. But it is definitely worth a visit if you're ever in that particular area. My point is just the significance of archaeology to this study. And of course, for those of you, and I can take you back to the days of Latin too, and the joy, nay, elation, when you got there that first day and you found out you were going to read Caesar's Gallic Wars, and you were going, Ecce bonum, and the teacher was already embracing you as the pet of the class. Well, maybe not, but the idea being that Caesar's Gallic Wars and the story of his impressions of the Gallic people and then the German people to the north, and he would talk about them and their various leaders, is a source of the pre-conquest peoples. But he, unlike his grandnephew, had no intention of messing with the Germans. He just wanted them to stay out of his activity, because his activity was in modern day France, that is Gaul, and bringing those people under control so he could get credit and become dictator of Rome, which he did. Now, it did take him 10 years, but you see the area there in yellow, and he was a superstar, soon to be a dead superstar, but he did get to be a superstar for a while. And again, that account is significant. But for many of us, wonderful high school memories. But this is the one. He has the results. The idea of Tacitus Germania, 100 pages in print, available on Amazon, could be rushed to your home if you get that excited about what I'm going to say. And I don't blame you. Because this will be the first major written source about the German people. Tacitus, one of the greatest of all the Roman historians. In graduate school, you'd have to read it. So if you're considering graduate school doing a PhD in history, just remember that. And it's not easy. So please understand that it's quite complicated. So this was just a little quickie. 100 pages is, But he wanted to provide this. He lived in the early period, basically 6th century. And it was like they heard about them. He might have met some. I mean, there were people there in Rome who were Germans, they were slaves, whatnots. And they were kind of exotic, you might say, the way they looked, their manners. And Tacitus was of the old school, as in, Rome is going to hell in a handbasket. Yeah. It's just, he was from the old aristocracy, and he was married in the upper class. And so he writes this about Germans like, I wouldn't want to be one, but they seem to have something interesting going on because our people are going downhill fast. Our people are guilty of, get ready, sloth. Yes. Impurity. Ugh. How can we be proud of being a Roman? Well, it's hard. We're supposed to be models, exemplars. And these Germans, lacking as they do, still have a lot going on. And of course, you can imagine this kind of imagery always makes historians smell a rat. What's going on? How do they know? Did they interview some Germans? Did they ask? Yes. Hans, can you tell us? Do you have a good marriage? Are you pure? Do you maintain chastity? Yeah, nein. It's like, really? And of course, the German Frau. Ivory snow? Yes, 100%. And what do we say to Hermann when he goes to battle? Go get him, baby. Because we don't say we're into peace, we're into dove land. I think not. Go get him. So, yeah, it's often said that you take it all with a grain of salt, but you have to appreciate it because you got an alternative. No. So you have that, you accept the bias, and you understand there's got to be something there of value, of truth, because it is written by Tacitus, who is highly respected. Now, let's see. Here's some other written sources that we will get to. Law codes, we love those. You say, who loves law codes? Well, you remember we talked last time about the imperial law codes to handle issues of non-believers, losers. Yeah. So that becomes very, very important, because what happens when these Germans going to be using German rulers, what shall I call them, German chieftains, are going to be calling on these allies of theirs, these Roman Christians, saying, we've got all these rules and regulations, but, we're illiterate. You think you could help us pull it together? And they're going, yes, of course we can. We would be happy. I told you they're collaborators, isn't it? So these law codes are basically of Germanic traditions, and these Roman Christians who are on the Germanic payroll are putting them down. Yeah, this is the law. And, they're going like, it is real and actual collaboration, because we will see some of them. And we've got the histories, and we're going to quote one, Gregory of Tours, talking about the Franks in Gaul and saying like, what great people. They're just, they're magnificent. And we'll find out why soon enough. And then, of course, the Venerable Bede, and I think it was his grandfather was actually a Saxon marauder way back when, who used to beat up on Celts. And now he's basically writing about how the Anglo-Saxons brought about, thanks to God, brought about this wonderful world we call Angleland, right? So, and dedicated to God. Say, gosh, well, this can be a valuable source. Yeah, they all are. But again, there's not an option like saying, I wonder what the Angles and Saxons actually said, or, any of these. That's not there. So you have these sources. And again, don't be surprised, they're all going to be church people. I don't think we're going to have a lot of lay people say, I'd just like to join your group. I mean, it's an exciting group. No, I mean, this is strictly a clerical vocation. Otherwise, your career options are limited. I think you'll be in the military, or you might prefer to go to Comer Hall and study agriculture. Yes, lots, because somebody's got to do it. Yeah, don't forget that. So, yeah, career options then are quite limited. But the clergy are doing all the writing and all that activity, which is highly significant. Now, according to our sources, the Germans, not surprisingly, were organized, but organized in a way that would be to the Romans very simple. And of course, that has to do with the Volk and the clans and the families, and the idea that, everybody's kin to everybody, and the families stand together. Their idea of nation was non-existent, of course. The extended families or clans, which oddly, they don't mention this, but think about it, would have to include the slaves and others who were part of them, because everybody can't be a warrior and a member of the warrior's family. Somebody's got to work. Yeah, I know, it's hard to believe and think about, but that's the truth. So you got this, and they're part of the clan too, if you think about it, because everybody's got a place. So you got the families, and they're all part of this people. And then the leaders meet when they are thinking about some big decision, usually whether to go to war with another clan. Because you always think about what do you do if you're a warrior and there's not a war? Well,
Practice.
I know they practice and also sloth. I don't know if they had mead back then, but that's a dangerous beverage. So I strongly advise everyone to avoid it when you're in there. Ooh, got me into a lot of trouble. Yeah. So I was of age, but still. And it's one of those creeping things you don't know. And then suddenly you're not in good shape. So all of this is to say that these Germans are probably taking a break, and you'd think, well, they're probably working out, doing a drill, you know, like being in the reserves or something. But I think they would just party and meet new people and that kind of thing. And idleness is the devil's workshop, I've heard. So all of that means that they tried to keep them busy. And so they would have meetings, and the big chief would say, you know what? Now you can just think about going to a pep rally. Think of the plainsman now and thinking about, are we going to beat them? Or are we going to lose to them? And of course, BEAT, and then fill in the blank. And so the assemblies were probably not point of order, sir. Point of order. You know, when you think about the Germanic people, don't you think it was like everybody was like, we're the biggest, we're the best, you know, that kind of thing. SEC, you know, it's like, just take that, losers, because you gosh, I could just kick you. And you think, but we're all part of the same great Germanic community. Yeah, but that's not. We still like to fight. And within families or clans, of course, they have the blood feuds. And that means, of course, you do it to us and we'll do it to you. Because we understand, of course, that the chaos of non-government, there's never an idea of, if you hurt a member of my family, the authorities will come get you. I mean, there are no authorities, right? So the feud, and again, remember before the Romans, all of this was oral. I mean, it's interesting to think about that. It was all accepted. It's not like somebody says, well, I'm not sure what I should do now. Should I kill you or should I beat you up? I was not sure about that particular regulation because you caught somebody who's older and maybe, oh, I know what they say, institutional memory. They used to say that to me. It could be hurtful, but I think in that sense, I appreciate it. It means I've been around so long, I knew exactly what to do because it was all up here. So that's kind of, yeah, I know. It's like that is the oral tradition, right? Institutional memory. And so that was the idea. And there were lots of feuds, lots and lots of them, because again, you have to think about what else are they going to do except misbehave with alcohol or people to whom they are not lawfully wedded. So fighting and loving, as they say in the country. So, yeah. So, comitatus, which sounds suspiciously Latin, doesn't it? Fourth declension, actually. So, but who's counting? But the idea is the association of the Lord and his followers. And that could be considered outside the clan because the Lord had his warriors and they followed him. And there must have been appreciation for a whole separate kind of filiational connection with the comitatus. The Virgils are extremely important because everything has a price in terms of punishment. And again, this is all accepted within the community. If you, I guess, touch someone inappropriately, there's a punishment for that. And the reason we know all this is because the Christians would write all this down. So, I mean, if you were to touch her on her hand or this, and depending on what age she was, and all of the various gradations having to do with that, those are all different Virgils, because many of us think of Virgils or blood money as just having to do with killing somebody. But there are, I mean, there's so many ways that people mistreat other people. So all of this would go in the law code, and it kept these Christian writers quite busy trying to figure out this codification, because everything had a price. Everything. You say, well, now we haven't got money. I know, but we've got livestock. We got other things, crops. Go Comer. Yes. All about that agriculture, all about our crops and animals. So we understand then that this is part of it. And because it would be very hard having to lose Bessie or having, your cow. That would be, I mean, Elsie. I mean, it would be very, very, those letters. So, yeah, it's like the idea over and over is the society dealing in what we would consider very primitive terms, but that from these law codes seemed to be the way it was. Now, it does go all the way up to murder and all kinds of violence of that sort, and appropriate capital punishment, as you can imagine. They also had specific kinds of trials if they wanted to have the gods, the various Germanic gods, involved in the decision making, because these would be major tests. Now, ultimately, the Christians will abolish it, but it will take centuries, because this is so inbred, the idea of the trial by ordeal, when you throw the person in the water and the person taking an oath, and then depending on whether or not the person comes up, the guilt will be decided. The trial by compurgation, love that word, has to do with taking oaths. And you say, I've heard about people who take oaths and they commit perjury. I see that on our shows a lot. Yeah. And they're going to hell. Okay. But what can we do now? Oh, but if they catch you lying, it could hurt. Because they're not very concerned about the humane condition. But the idea of compurgation means you have the group of swearers. So I got more swearers saying you did it than you as swearers said you didn't do it. So I guess 10 to 9, you're a big old loser. So yeah, I mean, it's absolutely amazing, isn't it? The ceremonies that will go on, and this will go on for centuries to come. There is one case that I can think about using the kind of oath taking that will involve church people. Even though they don't like it, sometimes they will intervene and say to the person who's about to take the oath, and of course, by this point, the society is more or less Christianized. And so the person who's about to take the oath. And of course, what is the priest going to say? Going to say, you know, I'd be really, really careful about what I said in terms of that oath, because it's mighty hot down there. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And so some historians claim that this might have prevented people from lying under oath. You know, that they kept thinking, it's just not worth it. Yeah, I did it. You got me. You know, gee, man, I'll go quietly. Yeah. So if that's true, I'm not sure, but the power of religion may have worked in some cases. Who knows? But that's oath taking. But I think the idea of this mass of people coming in and saying, "Yo, no, he didn't do it, man. No, he's telling the truth," and that people will do that though. Now, these are some of the general points I want you to be aware of. The ruling class, and we know those divisions. You're in the ruling class not because you can read and write, or it's because you fight. I'm not assuming they lived in splendid facilities, because archaeologically speaking, we know nothing about it. I mean, we're not talking about the Roman elements that survived, are we? We don't have German people. So we have no reason to believe that they were living particularly well, in the sense that we think of the Roman upper classes. But they're still the ruling class, and they do enjoy the services of the mass of people, whether they are German or not. And again, these issues of ethnography, like when the Romans, or the Germans rather, go in to the Gallic peoples who are Celtic, and they say, well, aren't we connected somehow? I don't know. But they, you know, it's like they're not that different if you stop and think about it, except they may speak differently, they have different gods, they have a variety of other customs. But again, we'll leave all those issues to others. The migrations really interest me, because they say that by the later centuries of the Roman Empire in the West, much of the Roman Empire was already Germanic. Isn't that wild? They're called federati. They joined as groups. And you know, it's sort of like where they promised Roman citizenship. Well, I'm sure they were. That was a reality by the 3rd century. But the idea is that this was a great opportunity for them, and the Romans were very happy to let them have it. So fight away. And you say, but Germans hurting other Germans? Yeah, I don't think that was a problem. I think the idea of like, we're fighting for the Romans, and this is the way we make a living, so we can do this. They're called federati, federated people. So often they came in as groups. And what that relationship entailed is basically they had their own leaders, but they understood that they were fighting for the Roman government, such as it was. These were not good times for the empire in the West. Sad, really. But because all of the traditions. I mean, these people could care less, right? I mean, they were just looking for work, hurting people, right? Yeah. So that was what they were doing. And they were fighting against other Germans, which I don't think kept them up at night. I mean, it's like interesting. And then, of course, there's the question of those blankety blank Aryans. It's odd, and we're talking about the latest edition of the book. There was only one reference to the Aryans. I mean, and of course, this is such an amazing story, but I guess you can't get it all. Arianism, which was the belief of a group of Christians, was basically that the Catholic idea of Christians, or idea of Christ being fully human and fully man, was not their idea. That basically, while he was the Son of God, he was not the Son. In other words, anti-Trinitarian. And in those days, early Christianity, it wasn't like a shrug and like, but you love Jesus and let's have a big hug. No, it was like, damn you. Yeah. And it can be hurtful too. I mean, it's I'm gonna beat you up.
You go to hell.
Yeah, well, yeah, but before you get there, you're gonna hurt. You're gonna be sore. You'll be calling for the emergency people to come get you, because I'm gonna take care of you. So it's very odd that Aryan missionaries, believe it or not, got hold of some of these Germans. We're knocking on German houses and saying, hi, we are heretics and we would like to talk to you. We have some literature. And you're thinking, yeah, we really, we got a lot of gods already, but thanks, but no thanks. But somehow, I guess these Aryan missionaries were really super salesmen. And a lot of these Germans were saying, wow, these are great ideas. It's like, it's amazing to think that before, a lot of people could imagine the Germanic groups had become Aryan, and you're thinking like, but just because Wolfgang becomes an Aryan, maybe Hans would prefer to be, another religion. No, if one goes, we're all going. Okay, one for all and all for one. Go big A. We're Aryans. And it's interesting, the sources, you say, always refer to Aryans. They never called them Christians, right? And you know who saw to that? Yeah, it's those Catholics. It's what you call winners' history, as opposed to losers, damn losers. Yeah, because Aryanism, it really grows. I mean, it's like a religious infection. They just keep growing among all of these groups. And of course, some groups are gonna go, today, like, no, thank you though for stopping by. We really appreciate it. And good luck with your mission. We get some of those. Not every Germanic group goes Aryan, but a lot of them do. Some will say, we've got so many gods already. We really love our gods. So thank you. And Auf Wiedersehen. Yeah. So, but that's really true. And it's never really been fully explained why this happened. But it's an interesting set of circumstances to contemplate. Whatever these folks were selling, people were really buying all the Wolfgangs and Heidi's were saying, this is great. I love this interpretation. You know, this is the theology I've been looking for. You know, it's amazing to me. Oh, scary. You're scared. You're not the only one. The scourge of God. So, you've been partying, sloth, unchanged, not keeping up with your studies. Here come the Huns. Attila the Hun is a fascinating character, no doubt about it. He is an ephemeral character in this period. They seem to have been related, these Huns, to the Mongolian people. They called on the Chinese, they called on various people, but they were equestrian people, and they were, to say the least, scary. No doubt they frightened everyone, in part, I think, because of the horses. But your book speaks about, gosh, they may have had tattoos or rings. But anyway, they frightened everybody. And they liked that because, I mean, they weren't there to help people reach out and touch. The Huns, they were going westward on a sort of tour, I guess you would say. They were looking, if they had been able, so it said, to conquer the Chinese or other people along the way, they might have stopped, but they keep on with their tour, and that's how they will end up in this particular position, because they will encounter the people we call Visigoths as opposed to Ostrogoths, one of many Germanic people. I think I've got a map here. Oh, yes. There we are. See our particular arrows. And these Huns coming down. And in fact, we understand the Visigoths, they must have found these Huns and their horses and all the rest so frightening that the Visigoths petitioned the Roman emperor to allow them to enter the empire. And could you imagine, this would have been rather scary for the Roman emperor. But the Roman emperor was an Arian. Isn't that interesting? I mean, you think the Visigoths were Arians. So he said, hey, brothers, could we come in the empire? Those Huns are nasty. You know, we kind of love you. And we share a belief, you know. So reach out and touch and all of that. So the emperor allowed them to come in with the Huns chasing after them, but they come in. They are granted lands by the Roman emperor. And then you see the big day. Now, you already know 476, so I'm not going to make you learn more dates. That will come later. But just for now, if you know 378, you could impress a lot of people. Because how many people know about the Battle of Adrianople? Probably not a lot. But it's Adrianople, of course, is a well-known spot in Greece. And those Visigoths are going to fight the Romans. Why? I thought the Romans were nice to them. They were, but, you know, the Visigoths said, we were really expecting more. You didn't really give us all the land that we deserved. And it's one of the, you say just a misunderstanding, but misunderstandings have consequences, don't they? So this consequence is, and this is a big moment in Roman history, the Roman armies are defeated. Very embarrassing. Yeah. And the emperor gets killed, even more embarrassing. He was an Aryan, so I can't say whether he went to heaven or not, but I can just say that his name was Valens. She was a nice person, this and the other. But he's gone, and those Visigoths, don't you think it would feel great to have a sort of Visigoth pep rally and say, we're big, we're bad, go big V, that kind of thing, if you had just defeated the empire? And of course, now the Romans are going to have to lick their wounds, and it'll be a very important period for them, not to say critical. But we'll see how that happens. But you understand basically that once one group gets in like that, everybody else is going to say, you see what they did? We could do that too. Let's go south. Because it's mighty nice down there. Yeah, the weather is great. It's those snowbirds coming down south and then enjoying life in the West. All of this then is to say this will open the floodgates. And the decision of the Romans, they come one, come all. But you know what they're saying to all of these German people? Y'all just go to the West. I would love for you all to enjoy our Western areas. It's like, oh, that's so East. I don't think it's that nice. I don't think you would enjoy that. It's the West, though. Whoa, there's so many wonderful opportunities for you people. Yeah. You said translators. Yeah, bilingualists who can translate, because basically, I'm not saying that all these people went westward, but many of them did. And part of it, of course, is a lot more land areas. You're into land development, we've got an area for you, because the whole western part of the empire was basically depopulated. It had been going on that way for quite a while. By the time we're talking 476, and we do talk about 476, yes, we do. At night, you can wake up and think 476, because then you say, oh my gosh, why isn't there a Roman emperor in it? We don't need him. Services aren't needed. It was beautiful while it lasted. But all of this is to come, and these people come in. Chronology of events. After the Visigoths and the Battle of Adrianople, they sort of go on a tour of the West, because they're going to end up in Spain. But while Delta is ready when you are, they didn't have the advantage of Delta back then, so they had to hoof it. And we've got senior citizens, we've got families, servants, a veritable entourage. And all of this means large numbers of people traveling. Now, this is all after Adrianople, right? So we always bear that in mind, because, when they tell it in Western Civ, it sounds like just a quick key, just pick up and say, hey, we won that. So, just get the van and pack up. And I don't think it happened that way. I think this would have to be very, very large. in terms of moving all those folks. Because it's not just the warriors, right? I mean, it's the families. And of course, peasants, agriculture. Yeah, Comer. Yeah, exactly. Agri-science now. So, all of this leads us, again, a date that you do not have to know. It's an option, 410. I'd like for you to know it, but I know. But great intellect requires great burdens. And 410, 410 is good. Because this was the day that the Christian saints would go like, ooh, it would make their skin crawl, because this was when the Visigoths invaded Rome under Alaric. And they would go, how could this happen? Well, I'll tell you how it could happen. The end of the world is coming to a city near you. And it's all about Rome. And if you don't believe me, ask St. Jerome or any of the saints of that day, because this was very keenly felt that if the city of Rome itself, I mean, it had fallen before, but still the melodrama of the Visigoths coming in, and basically it's sort of like a tour. You get, and I know when you go to souvenir shop, you pay for your t-shirts and your mugs, don't you? I mean, but I don't think these Visigoths will actually say, oh, I love that, I want that, it's like, heart Rome or something like that. I mean, I just don't think they were paying. And they're just taking stuff. Helga, get one of those. Yeah, it's like, yeah, Lucy, it's like how people are, and you got to get that. So that was the famous sack of Rome in 410. They come back and they say, arrivederci, and all of that. We're out of here. This is really a pretty area of Italy. We really enjoyed it. Well, thanks for stopping by. It's like, really? Oh, don't worry. They're going to have other troublemakers. But I wouldn't want to be in the Roman Chamber of Commerce right now. It's really not a good thing. Visigoths are onward into southern France and Spain. And then there will be other groups like our cousins, the Ostrogoths. They will be coming, as we will see. And of course, you can see the areas here, because it's like one after another, and you think, don't they ever run into each other? Oh, yeah. It's very interesting, isn't it, to think about. It's like once the groups establish themselves here, can't we just respect each other's boundaries and work together? No, we can't. We can fight about it, though, and maybe hurt some people. And so, yes, Lord, there'll be lots and lots of fighting. Now, this group is particularly interesting. The Vandals, like a party that extends overly long. Then that's, of course, where the word comes from. The Vandals, of course, are bleep Aryans. And look where they end up, all the way down south. And they cross that water, which is always fascinating. When you think about the navigation, they're getting the ships, and you think, how on earth did the Vandals do that? But they did, and established their kingdom. And meanwhile, the Huns had their great day under Attila, and ultimately went on to be defeated. And I chose that map because X marks the spot. Chalon near Paris. And look who defeated them, a united Roman-German army. Talk about ecumenical. I mean, coming together, Publius meets Hans, and then they say, down with Huns, we hate Huns. And so that was all she wrote for the Huns. It's an amazing event to me. This battle, again, just inundated with the 5th century dates. So again, it's optional. If you want some extra credit, you know, you can think about it. 410, you haven't forgotten him. Okay, thank you. Okay. But you have these opportunities also. I don't want to give one student favoritism. Everybody has the same chance. You want to remember 451. All right. Now let's go Raphael. Now, you think, what's this great Renaissance artist got to do with this? Well, the Pope of his day was a great art lover. He came by it naturally because he was a Medici. And his dad brought him up that way. So this Pope said to Raphael, you know, my predecessor was a very famous Pope by the name of Leo, just like me. I'm Leo the 10th, he was Leo the 1st. So this would be a great artistic accomplishment. And Raphael says, are we talking a gift or are we talking price? And of course, on the Medici, price, we've got money. No, he didn't, but he said he did. And the result will be this great painting, which is in the Vatican today, which you can all see when you're there. And you'll notice, you see the Pope, and guess who was the model? Leo the 10th. Oh, you think I could? I mean, I'm mighty busy, got my hunting and fighting heretics, but if you need me to be in the painting, I guess I can work it in. Yeah, right. Raphael. But anyway, it's one of my favorite paintings. And of course, look who's there flying around up there. St. Michael and all that. The idea being, of course, that Attila actually, with his Huns, got to the Roman suburbs. And Pope Leo I, Leo the Great to you, would 440 to 460, but that's strictly optional. Basically would be allowed to talk, negotiate, but you see all those folks flying around, it's a no-go for your Huns because you're a damn loser. So they stopped by, and then of course Pope Leo, you notice his cardinals, they're all fixed up, everybody looks great. And all of this is to tell you that no telling how long that painting must have taken. That Raphael is huge. But it's a great one. And you say, look at Pope Leo. That is just, I mean, it's comical almost, because of course it's exactly like Leo the 10th. Every painting of Leo the 10th, it's like, shucks, I don't want. But if you really need me to do it, I'll stand in. So that is Leo the 10th, the Medici Pope, who plays or is in the painting. So that is part of it. St. Michael and all the angels are there in the sky. The story of Attila and how that ends has to do with unfortunate results from honeymoons. That apparently he had a marriage, quote unquote, with a Germanic princess, and her family decided it would be a good opportunity for Attila to die. And so let's just have one more nightcap, sweetie, before bedtime. Yeah, we know where that's going. The morgue. Yeah. Autopsy. Well, we don't need an autopsy. We're pretty well sure how that ended. So I think we could say that's the end of the Huns. It's amazing to think, though, that they were that focused on Attila, but apparently they were, and this led to the end of the Hunnish threat, let's just call it that. And the Huns split up, and they are more or less in the ashcan of history. We don't hear as much about them, but they basically already made their big movement, big impact in terms of history. Because when you think about Attila and the Huns and their significance with the Germanic peoples and all the rest, I think we are pretty well established. Meanwhile, the Ostrogoths had this enormous kingdom, as you can see. And look, it extends all the way up into what I guess is Austria and Switzerland and maybe Yugoslavia. I mean, all of that. But again, I'm sure it's loosely connected, and the native population fell basically under the rule of these Ostrogoths, who are Aryans, but appropriately ruled by a king, shall we call him, who was reared, believe it or not, in Constantinople. So he had, shall we say, cultural connections with the Romans. And this is Theodoric the Ostrogoth. There was, of course, the Catholic leader in Rome. So as an Arian, Theodoric maintained his capital in the lovely city of Ravenna. And for those of you who have never been there, I think it's a wonderful place to visit. Very, very interesting. I don't know how far south of Venice it is. Some of you may know, but I don't happen to know offhand. But basically, Theodoric was able to say, yes, I'm an Ostrogoth, I'm a heretic, but you Catholic Italians, I care about you. I care a lot about you. Can we all just get along? Can't we all care about each other? So Theodoric carried it off for some time. He had Roman advisors, and some were great writers, great thinkers. And I mean, it's like, what do you say to these people? I mean, Friday, you got a long weekend, and you think, well, they're going to Catholic services and they're going to hell. But then you're thinking about, and I've got my Aryan church. She goes, they had their own churches. Oh, yeah. And they had their own bishops, Sunday schools, I bet. I mean, it's like we have these two parallel churches going on. But it's not like, y'all come to our services. We would just love that. No, because your people are going to hell. You better get straightened out, because you're getting a lot of trouble, damn you. So, yeah. So we understand that, but that's real funny. Starting on Monday morning, though, we're back to work, and we're all like, after Sunday, because you're thinking you're in a damnable hole. But Monday, we're back to work, working with the Catholic Italians, working with an Aryan king. It's weird, but that's life. So that's the Ostrogoths for a time. And then there are the Franks. Oh, I bet God loves him. Oh, I can't speak for God, but I'm just saying. This picture would indicate we got some heavenly support. You are very right. And the name is Clovis. But you can call him Louis to be if you want to. You say, how could you say that? I'm taking away the C. And then I'm asking for you to capitalize the L. Yes, I see it. I see it. Yes, you do. And gosh, are all those people, we get those lights, and then everybody's going, wow, sir, you look fabulous. Indeed, you do. This is Clovis. You see his dates. You don't have to know it. He's a contemporary of Theodoric the Ostrogoth. And he is, let's just be honest, a hardcore pagan. But for political reasons, he's married to a Catholic. I mean, I cannot imagine that first honeymoon. Honey, you are going to hell if you do not straighten out. No breakfast for you. But that is what will happen. It's more or less she that is the queen is going to be, according to the sources, such a great influence on him that he will decide to convert. Do not pass Arianism, go straight to Catholicism. Yeah, and that's no. Yeah, I mean, it's like so often they have to be Arians first before they get the truth. And he went straight to the truth. And in so doing, he gets to be numero uno. And what is a numero uno? First Catholic king. Because you say, but, well, I hate to say it, but all of the others have to go through Arianism first. But not Clovis. And he's number one. And everybody else. And you know what he will say to his troops after he converts? He said, it breaks my heart that this territory should be controlled by Arians. It hurts God too. So talk about a pep rally. It seems to catch on, you know, if you're like a Frankish group and they're going, go big C, you know, Catholic over the losers. So what happens? Well, look at from one of the church's chronicles. I love this one. Because again, right from the Chronicle of Saint-Denis, which is now a communist part of Paris, but that's another story. The idea is my queen could ill worship Saint Doors. I promise you perpetual service. Thank you. If only you give me my victory. So I have a little proviso. You know, it's like, I'm really excited to be working with you. Got a great plan. You and me can be really close. However, you got a job, and Dan's a great fear. Smote his enemy. When's the last time you've been smiting anybody? Yeah, but this is, I smite, you smite, she smites. But that, okay, and again, I'm going to tell you, I think a little academic dishonesty from the Old Testament, but that's another story, because I think they pulled this right out because we borrow passages without giving credit. No footnotes here, but you can figure that one out. And the king of the Alemannia and other Germanic people, he was slain. You know, I mean, it's like they fall like on an HBO series. I mean, it's not like there's not much time. It's like they're just going down. And everybody, and as the king fell, they yielded themselves to Clovis and became his tributaries. Sounds like a river, doesn't it? But it's like the Alemanni are not Catholic. So they're, yeah, capital losers. Yeah, capital, because they go down. And you know what Clovis says? Bring in priests. I need confirmation classes, baptism. We've got a vast array of religiously activities, right? Yeah. So it's like absolutely amazing how this happens. And you think, is all of this got to do just with a bargain? You carry out your end, I'll do mine. And that's the way it worked. Because it definitely did not change his lifestyle, shall we say. He still kind of beat up on folks. And some people got hurt due to his command. So, I mean, you can almost think of the Sopranos here. I mean, it's really, I know it really a little cold-blooded, but I guess that's how he became such a great ruler. The kingdom that he was establishing here then became the #1 Catholic kingdom. And it became very, very important. I mean, the other kingdoms were here today, gone tomorrow. You say, but they're the Visigoths. Yeah, and they eventually converted to Catholicism. But then here come the Muslims. They're gone. So what about the Ostrogoths? Well, same issue. I mean, it's like they were there, but they could not establish themselves permanently because the Byzantines are gonna want to reclaim. It's Italy, isn't it? So of course. And the Vandals, just bad news to everybody. So they're going to fall too. In other words, folks, if you're talking about a surviving Germanic group, it will be the Franks. Now, where do all these people go? Well, I don't think they go anywhere. I think they stay there. They may intermarry, and maybe they will decide, you know, I think we've had enough of this Arianism. I'm really interested in finding out more about the Trinity and maybe converting. But it does seem intermarriage and all the rest, these people will lose their identity because they're not going back up north. I can tell you that. They settle down and become Europeans. But the Franks are the ones who will maintain themselves as a major people, and they will enjoy lots of support from the Catholic Church as the first Catholic ruler of medieval Europe. And such, and you saw in the historical account that this was all God's will. And so that's how they view this. It's not going to be like, well, this is just another historical accident. No, it happened for a purpose. And therefore, what will France become? Our beloved eldest daughter, according to the popes. Unlike those Byzantines, who are Orthodox and Trouble. And there we'll go next week. Thank you all. Please come back next time.